Hello and welcome back to the Military Situation Room. Today is December 23, 2025. We have major developments across the entire front line. Peace talks are accelerating, Russian forces are intensifying their assault on Pokrovsk, and infrastructure attacks continue disrupting Ukrainian logistics. Let's get straight into today's updates. First, let's talk about the peace negotiations. According to U.S. officials, there is approximately 90% consensus on the peace plan between Ukraine and European partners. However, significant obstacles still remain, particularly regarding territory and NATO membership. The main negotiation points are focused on Ukraine's pathway to NATO membership. One proposal suggests that arrangements could be negotiated between NATO states and Moscow, rather than requiring Ukraine to formally renounce NATO membership in its constitution. This is a crucial distinction that could help break the diplomatic deadlock. Territory remains the biggest problem. Ukrainian officials have proposed creating a free economic zone in Donbas, but they emphasize this does not mean the region would be under Russian Federation control. President Zelensky has made it clear that Ukraine will not cede territory conquered by Russia. Despite the ongoing fighting, diplomatic efforts continue throughout the holiday period. This suggests both sides may be positioning for serious negotiations in early 2026. Now, let's discuss the infrastructure attacks. Russian forces have significantly intensified their strikes on Ukrainian supply lines over the past 48 hours. This represents a major tactical shift that we need to pay attention to. Recent strikes include attacks on the Odessa region, where oil depot facilities were completely destroyed in sustained bombing. Railway infrastructure has also been heavily targeted, with multiple rail lines hit, directly affecting military logistics. Over the past week alone, Russian forces have launched approximately 300 drones, nearly 200 guided aerial bombs, and 9 missiles toward Ukraine. Here's why this matters. These coordinated strikes are designed to degrade Ukraine's logistical capacity before winter operations intensify. The attacks are focusing on choke points in Western supply routes, which is a pattern we haven't seen consistently earlier in the conflict. If successful, this strategy could significantly hamper Ukraine's ability to sustain defensive operations in critical sectors like Pokrovsk and Zaporizhzhia. The Russians are clearly learning and adapting their strategy. By targeting fuel depots and rail networks, they are trying to create a logistical crisis that could force Ukrainian forces to withdraw from advanced positions due to lack of supplies, rather than direct combat pressure. The Pokrovsk sector remains the most important battle happening right now. This is where the war's primary focus is, and what happens here will determine the operational possibilities for both sides going into 2026. Russian forces are redeploying combat units from recently captured Kursk to strengthen their offensive operations around Pokrovsk. Since the beginning of today, there have been 100 combat engagements recorded on the front, with the heaviest enemy pressure concentrated on the Pokrovsk sector. Interestingly, Ukrainian forces have shown resilience. They've regained approximately 16 square kilometers in northern Pokrovsk and 56 square kilometers west of the city. Despite Russian claims of complete control, Ukrainian forces continue defending positions within and around Pokrovsk. This tells us the battle is far from over. So why does Pokrovsk matter so much? Let me explain. This city serves as a crucial logistics hub for Ukrainian forces in Donetsk. Its capture would accomplish 3 things for Russia. First, it would sever key supply routes to Ukrainian forces throughout the Donetsk region. Second, it would open approaches to larger fortress cities like Kramatorsk and Slavyansk, which are the next major defensive lines. Third, it would represent Russia's most significant urban conquest in months, giving them momentum heading into the new year. Looking at Russian tactics, they're employing what they've learned over the past year. They start with systematic drone strikes to degrade logistics and destroy Ukrainian vehicles and equipment. Then they follow up with dismounted infantry assault groups, moving in small teams to avoid detection and targeting. This approach has proven effective in places like Bakhmut and Avdiivka. However, we need to be realistic about what Pokrovsk's capture would actually mean strategically. Even if Russian forces take the city, it would provide only marginal tactical benefits. By itself, it's unlikely to unravel Ukraine's entire eastern defense structure. The fortress cities of Kramatorsk and Slavyansk remain well fortified and defended. What this battle really demonstrates is Russian adaptation on the tactical level, but it also reveals their limitations in rapid mechanized maneuver warfare. They're grinding forward meter by meter, but they're not achieving the kind of break through operations that would fundamentally change the strategic picture. Let's move to the Kursk region. Ukrainian forces continue defending their positions in Kursk Oblast, despite ongoing Russian counteroffensives. This represents a significant shift from the earlier offensive operations we saw months ago. Currently, Ukrainian forces maintain control over approximately 90 square kilometers of Russian territory. This is considerably less than what they held at the peak of their offensive, but it's still strategically important. North Korean forces continue supporting Russian counterattack operations in this area, which adds an interesting international dimension to this sector. The question everyone asks is, why are Ukrainians still holding Kursk? The answer is simple. Ukraine views these holdings as leverage in peace negotiations. It's a bargaining chip. When negotiations intensify, having Russian territory under Ukrainian control gives Kiev something concrete to trade. However, there's a cost. Maintaining these positions requires significant resources, troops, equipment, and supplies that could otherwise be used to reinforce critical sectors like Pokrovsk. So there's a real calculation happening here. Is the territorial bargaining chip worth the immediate defensive needs elsewhere? This is the dilemma Ukrainian commanders are facing right now. Now let's talk about what could be the most important sector in 2026, Zaporizhzhia. Russian forces continue their offensive operations south of Konstantinivka, with advances recorded near multiple settlements. Their strategic objective appears focused on securing areas east of the Kakhovka Reservoir. Here's why you need to pay attention to this sector. If Russian forces manage to establish firm control over this area, they could open approaches towards Zaporizhzhia city itself within 6 to 9 months. This would represent a massive strategic breakthrough, potentially more significant than Pokrovsk or any other sector we've discussed today. Think about it this way. Zaporizhzhia is a major regional capital and industrial center. Its capture would give Russia control over a strategic crossroads in southern Ukraine, and would threaten to cut off Ukrainian forces defending the southern front. It would also put Russian forces within striking distance of the Dnipro River, which is Ukraine's main north-south logistics artery. Right now, Ukrainian defensive layers in this region remain robust. The fortifications are strong and Ukrainian forces are well positioned. However, if Russian forces maintain sustained pressure throughout 2026, they could gradually create vulnerabilities. This is exactly the kind of slow, grinding approach that has worked for Russia in other sectors. My assessment is that Zaporizhzhia will become the primary operational theater in 2026 if current trends continue. Watch this space carefully in the coming months. So what's next? Let me give you my analysis of what we can expect in the coming days and weeks. In the immediate outlook, over the next 7 to 10 days, expect continued high-intensity operations around Pokrovsk. This battle is reaching a critical phase, and both sides are committing significant resources. Infrastructure strikes will likely persist through the New Year period as Russia tries to maximize pressure during the holiday season. Peace negotiations are also facing a critical juncture, with diplomatic pressure intensifying from multiple international actors. Looking at early 2026, I have three main predictions. First, the Pokrovsk battle will likely conclude in some form, and its outcome will determine whether Russian forces can sustain offensive momentum toward the Kramatorsk-Slavyansk fortress belt. If Russia takes Pokrovsk but suffers heavy casualties doing so, they may lack the strength to continue. If Ukraine holds Pokrovsk, Russia's entire offensive timeline gets pushed back significantly. Second, there's a real possibility of a negotiated pause in the first quarter of 2026. The growing diplomatic activity we're seeing suggests that both sides may be willing to explore ceasefire discussions. However, any ceasefire will likely be temporary and used by both sides to rearm and reorganize. Third, Zaporizhzhia may become 2026's primary operational theater if current trends continue. Russian forces are clearly building up capabilities in this direction, and it offers them strategic opportunities that other sectors don't provide. Now, let's talk about the force generation reality that nobody likes to discuss. Russian recruitment is bringing in approximately 32,800 volunteers monthly. Their average monthly casualties are running at about 34,600. This arithmetic is simple. They're barely replacing their losses. This suggests that sustained high-intensity operations will eventually strain Russian replacement capacity. Ukraine faces similar challenges. While exact numbers are harder to verify, Ukrainian officials have acknowledged mobilization difficulties and manpower constraints. This is why both sides may be more willing to consider negotiations than they publicly admit. Neither side can sustain the current operational tempo indefinitely without serious consequences. Let me summarize today's analysis with three critical points you need to remember. First, diplomacy is accelerating. Peace talks are showing real progress with reports of 90% consensus on various elements. However, territorial issues remain completely unresolved, and this is the biggest obstacle to any agreement. Second, Pokrovsk remains the decisive battle right now. What happens in this city over the next few weeks will fundamentally shape operational possibilities for both sides throughout 2026. This is the battle to watch. Third, the logistics war is intensifying in ways we haven't seen before. Russian infrastructure strikes represent an evolved strategy that could have serious consequences for Ukraine's ability to sustain operations across multiple fronts. Tomorrow, we're going to dive deep into the economic implications of extended operations. We'll assess whether either side can actually sustain the current operational tempo through the first quarter of 2026. The numbers might surprise you, but I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below with your analysis. Do you think Pokrovsk will fall before the year ends, or can Ukrainian forces stabilize the sector? What do you think about the peace negotiations? Are they genuine or just diplomatic theater? Your strategic assessments genuinely help inform our analysis, and I read every comment. If you want to stay updated with daily front-line analysis, make sure you subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell. That way, you won't miss tomorrow's deep dive on force sustainability and the economic factors that could determine this war's outcome in 2026. Until tomorrow, stay informed, stay analytical, and keep thinking critically about what you see and hear. The Military Situation Room remains committed to providing you with fact-based military analysis. We present information from multiple sources and try to give you the most accurate picture possible. We condemn all violence and sincerely advocate for peaceful resolution to this conflict. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next update.